Hello and welcome to this RFU webinar hosted by PADSIS. We're delighted to welcome all the big hitters of the RFU Education and Performance Department. And although the aim of the title of the thing is the RFU calendar, it's very much the aim of the occasion that you'll be updated with what's happening in the under-18 landscape and have the opportunity to ask any questions that you've got or any concerns that you have of how the under-18 performance programme will impact upon schools and education. So it's a rare opportunity. Thank you for joining us. It's a rare opportunity to have all those people together in the same place. And we welcome Don Barrell, who's the head of Regional Academies. Obviously, many of you will know. We welcome Jon Pendlebury, who's the England under-18 head coach, and long-standing friends of the sector, Mark Saltmarsh, who's the RFU National Player Pipeline Manager, and Mike Hart, who's the Schools and Colleges Manager. And the way we're going to operate is that Don first, and then Jon will give an update on what they're doing and why they're doing it and how it might be different in the legacy of COVID. But at any stage, feel free to put a question in the chat, which will be monitored by Mike and Mark. If it's a particular factual thing, they'll answer it in the chat. If it's something more widespread or of wider concern, then we'll maybe cut back in to that. But please do feel it's not a formal thing. It's a getting together of the rugby community, and with the aim of trying to broaden that engagement for people to understand what's happening at all levels of the game. So without further ado, welcome Don Barrell, Head of Regional Academies, for an update on the academy situation and plans for next year, Don.
Thank you, and thanks for having me on, everyone. I've got about 5 cameras on, which is probably how many of you teachers feel when the kids stare blankly at you following something you don't deliver that well. So as the cameras roll on throughout this presentation, I'll take that as a marker that all is well. But no, thanks for having me on. Myself and Jon are, really excited. Neil, picking up on the fact we definitely don't want this to be a rare thing, that we're in conversation and dialogue and you're understanding what we do and vice versa. So the more we can talk, the better from my point of view. So look, 2 parts really, and you'll probably get some really broad principles from myself, and then Jon's going to kind of say, well, so what? Well, how does that affect what we're doing and how we're trying to do it? And I think importantly and equally from yourselves, there's a big so what. You're critical stakeholders to these young people's journeys. You have these lads in your care for more time than anybody else. I think what we're trying to get toward is a place where, how do we all best service the needs of these young people and add value to the journey? So I suppose the bit I wanted to go through, and apologies if people feel I'm repeating this, but I don't think it's set enough. Language is deliberate, and just if you can't see me well, maybe just click on the little 3 blue dots and pin my screen, because I'll flick a few bits up. So try and make I know whilst terrifying, try and make my head go big if you can, just on your bit. So I think one of the pieces we wanted to go through was, okay, well, why community and why use the language community? What's the role of academies? I think to do it, probably go through why they exist. There's 2 things to this. Okay, there's probably one everyone sitting and thinking and understanding. I think firstly, that's to create a pathway from the first identification, not selection, identification. So when we're first IDing something, some form of potential in somebody, through to that England senior shirt. Now, I think if that were the only reason they exist, I'm not sure I'd be hugely keen on doing the job, nor we would be doing the right thing. Another thing I think we're all in this for. The second part of that I think is really important. We want to ensure the experience adds value to all those who engage with it. Now, pretty critical when you look at why do we want it to add it? Why do we want to add? Why do we want to talk about experience, and why do we want to talk about adding value to people's journey? So for some of you, what I thought would be helpful, let's try and work out what academies are not. Now, I think the easy stone to throw anyone, or clicking on the wrong screen here, Anyone know what this is? Come on, someone. I'm not moving on until someone unmutes and tells me what this is.
Fishing boat?
It's a fishing boat. What type of fishing boat is it? Come on, Neil. I know you're
Trawler.
It's a trawler. I think there's an easy assumption that academies go through trawling. Okay, like the idea of trawl fishing is you throw a massive net behind you, scrape everything up, and then you work it out by the time it flops onto the deck out of the net. They're not that. And I think we have to be really clear here. So by design and by purpose, academy programs are broad at the bottom. Okay, so one of the consequences of running any program that's broad, because on one hand, I think we often cry, well, we need to give everyone an opportunity and access, which is completely the right thing to do. One of the outcomes of that is you end up, you win a lot of people who engage, and therefore most people won't make it. Back to that second point of purpose, then it has to be about adding value. I think also, okay, they're not, for another poor fishing analogy, they're not fly fishermen, they're somewhere in between. Okay, so they're equally not just going around waiting for the one big salmon or the one mythical fish that appears. Okay, so there's in my eyes kind of, how do we view an academy? I think that whole idea and the thing we put up at the start, they are a community, so they do need to engage broadly in the community. That is the purpose. They do need to give time, affordance. They do need to engage with a number of people and give them every opportunity. So done well, an academy system, and if we take that as broadly as DPP, it will understand that if I have been playing rugby for 10 years and I started when I was 6, and Jon picked a ball up at 14, 15 in secondary school, we're going to present very differently. Therefore, the understanding and affordances we both need are going to be very different. And that's what I mean. I think the easy thing to say is academies are trying to pull everyone in, or then they'll get criticised for not providing enough opportunity. Okay, the whole idea of academy space is we get really comfy with some paradoxes and then we go and exist in them. And I think we keep talking about it. So the other thing I wanted to go through, there's just some real key principles in terms of operation. And I appreciate this is a whistle stop. We're going to give you loads of time at the end for questions. So I'm going to try and sort of keep this brief. So what is key? Firstly, everything they do is long term, so they're end in mind. There's no point, and I know JP will feel quite strongly about this, there's no point making a decision based on this week. And I think this is where we get into tension. So when some things don't get done well, and that's equally by an academy or by anyone else around this, when we focus on the short term, it is all about the long term. So where do we want to be at the end of this? Every decision being made with that in mind. Well aligned. Okay, so just by nature working with anyone who is under 18 years old, you have schools, parents, guardians, clubs, academy, girlfriends, social life. There's a lot going on. We equally know there is a hierarchy in terms of where young people will perceive value in terms of whose comment is most valuable to me at that point. I think it's one of the toughest pieces as a well-aligned program. The other piece on that, when we say player centre, or when we say, I guess in this next point, when we say it's holistic, do we all think about, do we all mean the same thing? Like I say, there's a long term. Okay, so what's long term, but do we all mean the same thing when we're saying holistic? Because a misalignment and a misunderstanding of those things, I think, really, really hurts people. The next one would be they're highly individualized. So one of the worst things you could ever see, especially those of you who deal with EAPs, so the players in the systems who are highlighted as high potential, there's something about them we want to go and work with. If you ever see two plans that look the same, then my suggestion is, that academy is not doing its job to where it needs to be. Everybody is different. Okay, so we all have different preferences. We all have different ways we want to be engaged with. We all have different needs at different times. Doesn't mean we might not do, we may need the same thing, but there's a real kind of uniqueness to how we need to plan and engage. And I think we all understand that. And I think actually in schools, you're pretty good at it. This is my one go. Couldn't find a picture of a stakeholder. Everyone happy with that? I was delighted with that as a pun. So thank you very much. I'll take it. I got one smile. There you go. That was it. Cheers, Ed. So stakeholder alignment. Okay, again, really critical. We said we wanted to be aligned in terms of program, but again, how do you get a 17, 18-year-old's parents, school teacher, girlfriend aligned to the same things? Actually, how do we let that young person be a young person, but also try and fulfill an aspiration to be a professional? Really difficult. Requires a lot of conversation. There isn't an answer. I think there are a lot of answers to it. So they're the 5 things we'd really push on when we talk to academy programs about engagement and what we want to do. So I think the next bit is just to go through some of the keys at 17 or 18 years old. And again, JP will take some of this principle and he'll show you what it looks like in practice. So one of the first keys, okay, so how do we align a community around an athlete? Not the other way around. So our job, the job of this system is to align around the person, not to get the person to fit the system. I think that, and if you ever perceive that or we ever think that's happening, we've got that the wrong way around. So when we say player-centered, in my eyes, that looks like take the individual, let's work out how the community supports them, not how they fit in the community. And I think when we're dealing with young people, that's a really critical difference. As players get older, go into senior squads, go into those first teams, within the Premiership, actually there are points where they will have a team, but I think with young people, we have a real duty of service to fit our community around their needs and where they are. So the pessimist would tell you a lot can go wrong, right, with all that information, and appreciate it's a whistle top across some big principles. I think actually there's a ton we can get right. There's some brilliant examples of things being done well, and actually, back to what do we all want? We all want the best for that young person. I think if you're going to work in education, if you're going to work in schools, if you're going to work in academies, we all have a passion for helping young people grow and get better. Like that's massive. That's one of the big drivers. So I think it's about, and I think the way we all try and approach is, well, what can we get right? What can we do in service to that person and really contribute? Back to point 2, what can we add value? How can we add value to their journey? So one of the things that JP is going to take you through very shortly is this idea of annual plans. The annual plan in our academy world is the key document for a young person. So what it is it's a document that's going to say, well, when should someone play? When do we think they should play? When do we think they should physically develop? When do we think they should change? How? Why? It sets everything out. And again, the idea of that is we align all our stakeholders, schools, parents, player, coaches around it. We all agree it. So rather than have the conversation in the middle of October about a game that's coming up, or in March about a sevens tournament that's coming up, and you start that annual debate, we get it done before we've even hit the summer holiday of the preceding season. So we get aligned around what does success look like, what needs to be in service of that. I'll whistle through this plan. You'll see this in a minute. JP is going to take you through in a bit more detail. So a few things in my last couple of slides. So academies, what do they need to align a community around? Rugby priorities, the physical priorities when we're dealing with young people and actually how they develop. And then lastly, off-field priorities, okay? All of those 3 things quite often cannot be done at the same time, okay? So when you speak to a young person, you speak to a coach, or if you hear a plan and say, what do you want to do? Well, he needs a massive improvement in his game understanding to get a contract, but we also need him to put on 10 kilos and get faster. Okay, those things don't work. We've got good sports science. We get it. You can't put someone through a ton of load and then also move in other things. So to understand them well and to execute them well, you're also understanding what's going to be in compromise or what would be in deficit. If we want a player to have a good time and just enjoy some rugby with his mates in his last year of upper 6, you might have an academy manager thinking, well, it's not going to prepare them as well for that first team pre-season they're going to hit in 5 months. And that might be the right thing by the player, but equally they're going to have to do a load of work aligning, well, how will that person come in and how do I manage a first team coach to be aware of the expectations or where that person is physically or from a rugby point of view. So there's loads behind it. I think done badly, all you get is all you schools may occasionally get is you'll get there. We don't want them to play at this point. I think you need to understand why, and I think we always need to know what it's in service of. And like we say, the best thing for that player sometimes is just to be with their mates. It might be the job of the academy to compromise. Equally, it might be the job of the school to understand we've got to tee them up well. There isn't an answer. There isn't an answer. You can't just play players to manage load. I think one thing JP is going to pick up on is next year is high risk. Okay, and sort of believe us when we say it. They haven't played a lot this year. What you can't do is take someone who's got low training, and everyone hasn't trained a ton, or everyone hasn't played a ton, to then go and put a massive spike in, puts everyone in a risk period, and like the whole sort of youth population is in a bit of generalised danger. We have to be very careful and understand what we might step back on, just to make sure we can all achieve and get the things we want. So I think there's a really important healthy tension between schools and academy programs. And again, in the way that your parents always sort of hold that healthy tension as you watch your kids grow up, you want the best by them, and actually you are in the best position in schools. You see them, you have them loads of the time. You are, when we talk about pastoral and the care that would go around them, I think it's brilliant. I think the idea is how do we sharpen your swords to really help us achieve the rugby bit, and then how do you help the rugby club achieve some of the, understand some of that broader stuff that's going on, and really develop and concentrate on developing that person. So in my eyes, it's a massive two-way street. It's got to be a really healthy relationship. It's really hand in hand. It's one of those things where we do it well, we both achieve with it, schools and clubs. Like, it should never be in balance of one or the other. It should always be, it should always be in dialogue. I think the last question, and maybe one I'll float with you when we pick it up when we talk, what can you ask for? So what can you ask of an academy? I guess maybe I'll answer that when we get to the questions at the end. But I think that's my piece, really. I think what I'd like to do now is just hand to JP, who will tell you how the under-18s are planning to interpret some of that from an England point of view, what it means in terms of their planning, their programming, and also he'll pick up on a bit of that annual plan and why it was important. JP.
Don, thanks very much. And we move over to Jon Pendlebury, England under-18 head coach. Jon.
Cheers, Don. Thanks, Neil. 1 second, guys. All being well, you should. Yeah, cheers, Neil. Thanks for that. You should be able to see this screen now. But look, I think as well, guys, I share an awful lot of your frustrations in you guys teaching out in the colleges and the schools across the country in terms of sport, or what you've been able to do with your student athletes that you've got in your schools and your colleges. I've started late December 2019 and not been able to get on the grass and actually coaching a fixture just yet. It's been an awful lot of COVID protocol that's put paid to what we've been allowed to do and not been allowed to do on the pitches, and obviously under-18 rugby, as we know, up until this last month has not been able to go ahead, where some of you might have been able to play school games, college games, some of you have made a decision not to, as well as the academies have been able to get anything between 2 or 3 or 4 games on themselves. But just in terms of the under-18s and going forward, exploring boundaries and what we're about, there's a pretty exciting piece of work that we've been working on, and we've been spending an awful lot of time on it, and that's been from everything from the community side of it through to the England 18s, men and women, under 20s, and then even having some senior involvement as well. So hopefully that'll be coming out soon, but I'll be able to touch on what exploring boundaries is as well. And just flicking through this presentation now, but just quickly, at the end of this presentation, hopefully to focus on establishing what exploring boundaries is and give you a bit of an idea for that in terms of priority areas for the under-18s, a direction of where the under-18s are heading in the next 2+ years, and then a brief context around how we work. And this for me is what I hold at the back of my mind, in my pocket when I'm on the pitch, but then also when I'm planning with the group that I've got, having conversations, but the who, the what, and the how. And also, Don mentioned it, is just starting with the end in mind. So you guys holding true to yourselves when you are having those conversations with the academies, like what's the end in mind and hope for that student player that you've got at your college, your school, and in terms of what's the end in mind for that academy, and also what's the end in mind for me. And this is pretty important, like what game are we trying to win? This again is what I base around all my coaching and practice. Is it the one on Saturday coming or the one in 4 years' time? And I always think if I've got that there central in terms of what I'm doing building up to the Saturday coming, even the Saturday in 24 months' time as well as the Saturday in 4 years' time, all right, winning now, losing now, making a decision to play now, to train now, to be head boy for the evening, to attend that parents' evening, to go on that school social trip or whatever it is, does that make that player stand him in good stead for what's coming and what he's preparing for going forward? What the purpose of the pathway is, I think we'll all have a bit of an interpretation of it. This is what I believe the purpose of the pathway is developing and challenging and progressing regional eligible players with the ability and the potential to make up the future Premiership Matchday 23s, as well as representing England and being senior internationals and hopefully beyond. And I include beyond in that, meaning challenging and winning for World Cups, as well as even getting on a British and Irish Lions tour, because this is where these next players will be coming from. What is exploring boundaries? I think a lot of us did an awful lot of homeschooling of his own children, but a lot of you guys were homeschooling and teaching from home and everything like that. This is where I had to look up what my nouns and what my my verbs were. But again, the piece of work that we've been looking at, exploring boundaries, and how that is everything from grassroots level all the way up to schoolboy, schoolgirl rugby at under 18 level. Tactically adapting to win. And if anybody saw the England 20s game at the weekend, where they had to tactically adapt and change things at half-time to come back from being well on their way to a bit of a hiding to France, that's what the under 20s are about. And then if you think about England winning, performing, challenging and winning Grand Slams, challenging and getting into finals and winning finals in the World Cup is what the purpose of the England senior level is. But going to this, exploring to travel through an unfamiliar area to learn, and then a boundary, a line which marks the limit of an area. So is that a perceived boundary that we might be putting on a player ourselves? Is that a boundary that player might be putting on themselves? And how we challenge that, how we explore that and push past that. And that's what I hope and look to work towards in terms of the under 18s going forward. As I said, this is the triangle that I talk about, the who, which me, when I'm working with my staff, is my staff group, not just the players that I'm working with, whether it's a group of 5 players, whether it's a forward pack, whether it's the backs, whether it's 2 packs, whether it's a squad of 40. The what we're coaching and what are we coaching and why we're coaching that, and then how are we coaching it and how we're delivering that. And I know there's an awful lot of different ways out there. There's an awful lot of conflicting messages out there as well. And for me, the big thing is, so long as it is meaningful for that player in that context and it is right at that time, it's pretty important for them. So the who is the players, and this is quite clearly and quite easily their needs and wants. And their needs and wants at this level, thinking in terms of rugby, is what is happening at the game at under 14, under 16 level, and they need to be doing that prepares them for under 18. We've obviously got the big milestone that we have forwards who can only push 1.5 meters in a scrum and 45 degrees, and what are their needs and wants to get them ready for when they're possibly sitting on a bench at National League level or first team level in the following August, having exited school at year 13. What's the needs and wants of that student in school that particular week that is pretty important for what might be coming up next month in terms of an exam? The what, the clear pathway and the progression and the opportunities, again, going back to the demands and limitations of the game at under 18s, under 20s level. What are they preparing for and what are they doing at that point? And the how, and this is like the how is, how are we coaching it? How are we delivering? And then what is our activity structure? And things that we need to look at and certainly address, and we have done, and COVID's given us an awful lot of time to reflect on that, is how we're able to do that. So it is holding these stakeholder relationships, and it is the club visits, it is the school and the college visits, it is the game observations, and being visible, which is something as the RFU I can certainly think back to 2017-18 wasn't visible, wasn't there, didn't have the structure, didn't have the connection. The rugby individual development plans, and each school, college might call this something different, but ultimately the same thing, how they marry that up with their academy, and even possibly other sports that some of these guys are involved in. The annual playing programme, and this is really important to me, is that it's not a fixture list. It's not copy and paste the fixtures that you've got. Don's alluded to it a little bit, is what is meaningful for that player at that moment in time, or why are we doing this month for something that might be happening 6 months further down the line, and you guys getting involved in the case conferencing of that player and the planning and the rationale in why you're doing it. Additional stakeholders that you guys, some of you've got in your educational establishment, some have not, and you're able to lean heavily on the academies that you're working with, the specialist visits that you might be seeing and accustomed to. Something that you might not be, and you say, well, why do we get this for one player because he's at one academy, but we also share our school with another academy, but this player doesn't? And just asking why and understanding. The education support and advice that we're able to give now with the better experts that we've got, as well as where we challenge the academies to deliver on some of these areas. And it might be that the school, the college establishment can marry that up as well. And then just something that is massive for us going forward, and a bit of a new addition, the mental skills development and support on and off the pitch for these guys going forward. Just flick through these quickly, but knowing our who and the limiting factors of this, and just look, this was a big study that was done and what these young guys are about, and look, flicking up a number of things there that's going on in these young guys' lives as you're seeing them day in, day out. You're recognizing this all the time, but just he's recognised that there was 47 different factors that was affecting a young adult coming through, or an adolescent coming through, what might end in supporting going on to success on and off the pitch, success in the exam hall, success in the assessments and practicals that they're doing as well. But then certainly from a sports specific point of view, and this study was done in football. But are these just limitations, or are these opportunities as well that we can sort of tap into? Because when I sat down and I was talking to sort of 14 of the guys that I was working with at the time, these are some of their ambitions that they were coming up with. They wanted to be the best player in the world. They wanted to captain England. They wanted to go and play in a World Cup or win a World Cup. They wanted to play for the British and Irish Lions. This is absolutely fantastic, and this could be the end of that 4-year plan and thinking about the end first. But do they understand, and is this a limiting factor, and is the mental characteristics and skills that they've got at the minute, or they've not got, and the awareness of how they end up getting there, and you guys supporting them and getting them through with everything that you're doing in terms of a curriculum, and just the same as you would with any other subject as well, not just in terms of being an elite potential sports person coming through. In terms of the principles, I think we all recognise this. Go forward, the possession, providing support, create continuity and applying pressure. There's also documents that have been out in the past as well. This was the long-term athlete development programme for Rugby Union. I think it was around 2012, 2013. This was a youth physical development model. Just picked out the males one there. There was a female one as well. And there's the other long-term athlete development models as well. I think these are quite dated, and I don't think we can go to these and just say, this is a 16-year-old boy who is a September birthday, this is what he needs to do. This is a 18-year-old boy in upper six, but he's a August the 31st birthday, and this is what we've got to do. I think that's what Don's talking about. Every journey is different. Every player is different, and it might be that you've got 2 players in your first 15 at the same academy, but they've got 2 very, very different season planners. They've got 2 very, very different needs, and they've certainly got 2 very, very different aspirations and how quickly they'll get there as well. But in terms of needs analysis for now, what are we preparing for in the future? And this is part of that. This is part of that piece of work that we started back in last summer as well, of how we were looking to looking to bring that forward in terms of characteristics from a junior development all the way through to a senior professional. And we sat down with the first team, and that's some of the areas that they came up with as sort of 1, 2, 3 priorities, if you like. And then how we started to break that down. Well, what does technical, tactical, mental, and physical look like for an under 16? What might it look like for an under 18? And then how might it push on for an under 20? And so that's pretty exciting that we are looking to bring through as well. Again, the who, the what, the how, and the needs analysis. Me having that triangle there, again, over the top of the triangle sort of has this mental model of how I want to play the game or try to break the game down pretty simply. In attack, penetrate and score. On defence, get the ball back. And then there's always that contest, and there's always that transition of attack to defence, defence back to attack. And again, what does that look like for the players? Chatting to them, again, they're saying, I want to work on my breakdown skills. So what does that look like at under 16? What does that look like? I'm the best under 16 and I'm playing for the first team. I'm a 17-year-old, but I've already played 240 minutes at under 18 Academy League because my academy is telling me that I'm the next best thing coming through. So all these areas that these guys are wanting to work on, as well as a player turning around saying, I don't want my natural creativity to be stifled, being over-drilled into shape, and what I should do in each situation, and it being prescriptive. So if I'm going in with a broad area of penetrate and score, get the ball back, and then contesting, looking at skill, tempo, support and awareness, it's pretty broad with how I can coach that.
I think we might have lost Jon.
Have we?
We're here. I think we've lost Jon.
I think we've lost Jon. I wonder whether he's trying to rejoin there. But whilst he is, let's pick up. And if people have got questions, particularly at this stage for Don, please do put them in the chat. The first one we've got, Don, which I hope you can take, is whether you've got any thoughts on the role of county divisional England counties as an alternative to supporting player development, and particularly among the later developers who aren't in the pathway immediately.
Yeah, and there's loads here, and also we need to acknowledge this is a really emotive topic for people. So I think any system that you create, and just to kind of caveat this, like any system you create will always have outliers. Equally, you know, the reason that some people will go on to make it, I would have had a load of players that came through Saracens in my time who were released. You'll read about someone like Danny Kerr, who was, you know, released by Stuart Lancaster and then rejoined the academy. What we have to be really careful of here is saying that, you know, because something doesn't exist or does exist, it's the solution. I think what you've got at the moment is a really comprehensive pathway that the vast majority of people come through. I think when you look at CB, when I joined the RFU, I felt, certainly at the younger ages, and you'll see the movement changes we've made since, it was a real conflicting piece. So when you ask the players, the parents, and they would say, well, hang on, my son is in a part of an under 16s, 15s CB, but he's not in the DPP, or he was in the DPP and he's not in the CB. Actually, what you had was kids playing at club, school, county, DPP. Like, that's not what people told us they wanted, nor what we felt was right in terms of the amount. Where do I think CB is best suited? I think the DP is a really comprehensive program. I think at their best, they work in service of each other. So for me, up until and including under 16s, you've got a really comprehensive pathway through the DPP. I think county rugby at under 17s that sat as a like alongside an academy program that would pick up and utilise players that are not part of academies. So to provide that opportunity would be a good thing. But certainly we'll see it coming later on in a pathway. I think we have to be, again, really clear around what's the purpose. Like, we've made a really clear definition here that the purpose of the DPP, the academies, other stuff is in service of the senior game. And I think at the point the counties have a different purpose. So while some people may still come through, there genuinely are many now who are 18 years old who have not been in or part of an academy system who will come through academy. So I think it's just been really clear, Neil. So at the moment, I think certainly, done badly, they're just conflicting parts that confuse people. I think done well, it would be in service of each other and provide either a level down for someone's released or, like I say, provide that opportunity for later developers. And if we're going to talk about that, we need to talk about it at 17s, 18s and older, not get into conflict about under 16s and below.
Macca, do you want to come back on and comment on that, or are you happy with that? Unmute yourself.
I think, we've alluded to the number of players that we're losing to the game potentially over the last 12 months without contact rugby. We thought that might have held some, but actually, the schools certainly have concerns about maintaining players. We then look at those players post 18, as Don's just been saying about, how we protect them, that transition into university rugby, and all of a sudden we have this feeling of a player base is narrowing and having, I don't know, alternative opportunities that is aspirational for young folk to be looking towards. I feel is something that needs serious consideration. Shame that that's the situation we're in at the moment.
Don, do you want to make a quick comment that Jon is back in and able to resume his presentation? But I'm keen that
No, happy to. I think it's back to how many players, when you look at it, and we have done the numbers, I don't want to make it up here, but I can certainly put it out for you. How many players have come through that pathway who've not been part of another system? It is not a lot. And then you look at how much, you look at a program like DPP, the number of people involved in the, and this is a sad way to look at rugby, but the cost per head of a program like that is very different to one where you're looking at a, like you say, divisional or England in terms of the alternate teams. They're confusing, I think, in terms of pathway. Yes, I understand the emotion tied to it and understand everything else, but I think when we're talking about, this is why you've got Mark and Harty on the call, when we're talking about what's the solution to keep people in the game, that's a very different conversation to what is right for potential, future England internationals. I think there's another piece that's worth kind of just mentioning here. We know the players. So you look at with Professor Camilla Knight over at Swansea, we've been running projects for last year. So the players self-identify very differently at a point. So we started to do a project consistently at Wellington where we looked at players, and there's a group, they're the ones who tend to stick in it, that start saying, well, I am different from him, and I'm different from him because they're just here for fun, and I now want to take this a bit more seriously and start to make some sacrifice. And I think there's a point around 16 when that really accelerates in players. And I do think where we need to be better is in finding, I think, appropriate ways for keeping more players in those elite, I hate to call them elite pathways, in those pathways for longer. We're pretty good. A few years ago, we had an England under 16s. We thinned the whole country down to 23 kids at 16 years old. And then none of them were there at under 18. And certainly not many under 20s. So then that became Wellington, where there was 420 of the best kids. County stuff became DPP, where it moved again from small teams to much broader groups. So you want to give as much experience for as many people as you can, for as long as you can. However, it needs to be through a singular and clearly understood pathway. And I think that's the bit we occasionally get into debate over.
Thanks, Don, and thanks, Jon. I just wonder whether we could go back now to Jon to finish off where he was, and then we'll pick up any of that discussion later. So if there's anything you want to bring up again, Jon, Mackenzie, do bring it up at that stage. Thanks. Jon, in an act of faith, we come back to you and hopefully can resume where we were.
It depends whether they want to keep listening now, or if somebody's just room 101 to me. And
I realise just how popular you are.
I felt like it might have been Macca. It might have been Macca there that put me in, like Graham Norton or something. I don't know. But are we on there, Neil?
Yeah, we're on.
Yeah. So just bringing back to, in terms of like, if that's my mental model of the game, and if you like that, that's the easy bit of looking at the players, chatting to the players, understanding them, thinking about what players similar, what are their needs now, looking at the players, chatting to the coaches that they're working with, the coaches that are like yourselves that know them inside out and upside down. But it's then how we then start pulling it all together, and hopefully you can see this. I've tried to make it as big as I can. If this is the annual plan, if this is the annual season program, and the information on here, and look, this can be go on and on and on, and it can have cell after cell, and it can have row and line and column after column, but the information that's on here as well is not exhaustive, and it is not set. And again, this is where it should be individualized to that player, and possibly even that school or college, of what you've got going on. You've all got your different terms, you've all got your areas, what your student players have to commit to, and then you've all got your different fixture lists or cup competitions or college competitions that you want to commit to. But then how you start to break that down as well, there might be some of the younger EAPs that are playing multi-sports as well, or the different commitments that they've got before Christmas to have after Christmas. And just, if you've not seen a document like this, or the same document or something similar, if I was a school coach and I got EAPs, or I knew that I'd got academy coaches and managers interested in the players that I was working with Monday to Friday and on the Saturday mornings when they were playing, I'd certainly be asking why, especially if they're telling me that this player has something. We think about this player an awful lot. I'd be asking why we've not got a document like this, or why we're not working together to get this in. Because again, for me, this could have on the parents' evening. It could have on the head boy. It could have on the touring team that's coming over from the Southern Hemisphere. That is a once in a lifetime opportunity for that young lad to be playing against a team from a different playing philosophy, culture, and everything like that. And where we fit it in and how we get it right, as well as the opportunities, and we will have them, and they have come across, and there's been a number of guys over the last few years in terms of the Marcus Smiths, the Curry brothers, the Alfie Barbarys, of where they need stretching and challenging, and even picking up and taking out of an age grade program and putting into another opportunity. And it might be just something as simple as he's not representing the school this weekend because he's just going to go into the first team environment and sit in the back of a meeting. He's not going to train. He's just going to sit in the back of the meeting, or he's going to be he's going to be working with the kit manager for the day. And an example like that, it doesn't always have to be he's not playing this game because he's playing another. So some examples it could be, and I don't want to be spending too long on it and teaching you to suck eggs, but the real detail it needs to be is the agreed playing minutes. My concern is massive around that. The maximum some of these guys will have played is 280 minutes this past year. They've not been doing the Tuesday, Thursday sessions in school. They've certainly not been doing Tuesday, Thursday, playing on a Saturday morning, and then building up 10, 12, 14 games before Christmas. The robustness that they're able to get in, that then is standing them in greater stead for playing at a higher intensity and volume and level next season. How we sort of support that and look at what is the rugby focus and what is priority, what is the strength and conditioning focus, where it might be that we're only going to play them in half a game because we know that they are training and playing tied at the minute, or there's a big exam push at the minute and exams are before Christmas or after Christmas, and we need to take his foot off the gas. We've agreed he's not going to play for academy, or he's not going to play for school at this moment in time, but this is the reason why. And the main person to understand that is the player. And then it's probably parent and guardian, and then it is the understanding and agreement that comes then between the academy, the school, the college, and possibly even us at some point. It might even be us that's giving, and us understanding that yes, we'd love him to be playing in an England under 18 festival over in Marcus East next Easter, but we understand that he's only going to be available to play for three half games. But that's on his planner, that's discussed, that's agreed, and that's how it fits in there. In terms of that, it's working through how that then fits into my season and what we're doing. And again, if that's my mental model there in terms of time that I've got with the guys, look, by planning and looking ahead and trying to think ahead for a year, 24 months, maybe even 4 years, I'm just trying to reduce the chances of unpredictability and at least have some idea of something cropping up in the future. I'm guessing, and I'm making educated guesses with all the information that I've got from all the stakeholders. It's got to be balanced, it's got to be dynamic and flexible, but it has to be meaningful for this young man that's going through it. And in terms of time that we've got with them, that's the total days that there might be in an England under-18 pathway with us, a maximum of 41 days. There might be one fixture versus Italy in August. There might be 2 fixtures if you're a September boy. There might be up to 5 fixtures, including the 2 September fixtures if you're a January boy as well. And that is 11 camp days across the year. So how we fit that in is pretty tough. How we squeeze it in, it's pretty tough, as well as everybody wanting to have these players playing for them. What we're doing, we're looking at running 2-day camps, 1.5-day camps. We're looking at running sort of the usual October half-term camp, the February half-term camp preparation, getting ready for the fixtures that might be at the end of the season in that March-Easter period. What that looks like will always be physical monitoring and data collection, and us getting greater information and background on these players that then we can then feed that into some of the studies that we're doing and get the information out to the grassroots level of the game. What we're working with them off the pitch to prepare them for rugby on it when they're going into the senior academies, those that have the opportunity, those that are going into the university programs, as well as some might even be going into first team environments as well. And then also what we're doing technically and tactically with them on the pitch, and how we're looking to stretch and challenge for those that will end up pushing on to being under 20s for the next year or possibly even the next 2 years. Again, the who, the what, the how we're doing that in terms of who it is, what we're doing, how we're delivering it, and why we need to be doing that, as well as how we're doing it, and me being prescriptive with my coaching staff as well, and just across these sessions and how we're looking to do it. But if we take that week there that is going to be in February half term 2022, and how we want to lead that session, to be a 60% day, a 75% intensity day, a rest day, before we end up, say, playing 15 on 15, challenging with some different scenarios and looking how we stretch and challenge them in our environments. What the practice structure is, what our coach behaviour, who's going to be the micro coach delivering, who's going to be the drone coach that's stepping back, what our session plan looks like, what is our understanding of that player. Is he going to be a bench player? But the reason he's benching is because he's not ready at under 18 level yet. He's just moved positions. For example, he's a back row forward that's playing in the front row, but we think he's going to be a starter for the under 20s. How that filters through and how that looks, it is curriculum. It is looking to get that race to learning, and there will always be spiraling and revisiting. What we do in October, we'll be layering on top what we've done in September. What we do in February, we'll be layering on top of what we've done in October half term. So if that's the intended curriculum there, that's the delivered curriculum that we're working through. If this is what the guys might be seeing explicitly that they're experiencing, but underneath it all, there's going to be a lot of hidden curriculum as well, what we're trying to do off the pitch, or it might just be that it's not right in the face, it's not there, and they don't understand, they can't see it right, they can't see it in front of them of what they're doing at that moment in time, but then they end up getting the fruits of that later on in the season, or even in the future. And as I said, they're just trying to demonstrate the spiral. And then as well, look, I don't want to confuse you too much as well, but if you look at the very, very bottom line here, if that is next season as a broad outline, this is what it would look like there, this is what it would look like the year after, and this is what it could look like the year after that. And you can see that is that 2 to 3 to 4 year plan. The blue arrows are just trying to represent transition points in terms of you've gone from being an under 18 to an under 19, you've gone from being an under 18, you're an under 20, and how that can happen pretty quickly for some of those players as well. And again, just look, it's spiraling on top, it's revisiting, it's coming back, and it's just learning on top of what these guys are doing in your environments. They're getting a bit added in their academy, they're getting a bit added in the England pathway, they're coming back to your environment a better player, and they're pushing on and going beyond that as well. So Neil, hopefully that's come through a lot better, and we've been able to finish it off. And yeah, just any questions?
Thanks very much, Jon. And if people have got questions, please do indicate that in the chat, either for Don or for Jon. And just while people are doing that, Jon, I just wondered, you posed the question at the start, which game are we trying to win? And I liked the question, but I wasn't sure what the answer was. And I wondered what your answer is about what game it is you're trying to win. What is the timescale of success you're measuring the programme by?
Good question, and it probably comes back to, again, that individual and where he is in his journey as well. If you think about, I was talking to Harty earlier this week, and then again today in preparation for this. If I am working with the 1.5% of the guys that are in their regional academies, and I'm picking it out of the school games, and I'm picking it out of the college and the academy league games there, that if we are doing something with a player in an England pathway, or we're supporting him with in a school fixture on a Saturday morning, if he is winning and it's creating a learning opportunity for something to repeat that, or do it better, or do it faster, or do it more consistently in 4 years' time. And when I say 4 years' time, I'm thinking more of an under 20, because we could have an under 16-year-old in our pathway that we want to bring in, a 16, 17-year-old, that then in 4 years' time is an under 20. We could also have an 18-year-old or an older 18-year-old that then in 2 or 3 years' time could also be representing England A. He could also be on a plane and he's heading to a World Cup. Eddie Jones is picking a World Cup for France in a couple of years' time. And it might be that something that we're doing here that is a challenge, it is a stretch, it is a learning opportunity. Whether we win or lose or draw, or we make a right decision, a wrong decision on that Saturday, does that stand that player in better or greater stead for something that he is able to do better on the highest stage? And it is the 1% that I'm working with, that then is even less percent that goes through to an Eddie Jones's EPS squad in France in 2023.
So are you saying, therefore, that the game you're trying to win is different for each of the players in your pathway?
Yes, because some of them, it might be that we've agreed that he's only going to play a half, and that game might, just as the Academy League did this time around, the Academy coach is trying to manage it. Some played under 17s first half, under 18s second half, so the game looked very, very different. Some came with 35 players to a game, some only came with 28 or even a match 23. So look, very much different for each individual, but also very, very different for some of the teams that we set up and that we look to go out with. And you can see that, I'm sure as well, if ours is exploring boundaries and how we're looking to stretch and challenge, and it might even be going out in a game where we've picked a 15 and we've picked a match 23, but we're looking to constrain them in this game and say that you can't do that, but there is a rationale for it. It might be to bring out something later on in the future. We will always set up and we will always select a team and a squad of players at September and January birthdays to try and win and give them the best opportunity to win. But if it is detrimental to an individual, it might be that, look, we're not going to play you for the full 70 minutes. We're not going to play you for all 5 games. There's a bigger picture here, and this is just a small part of it.
Thanks very much for that, Jon. Just one other question in the absence of any others. You snuck on the bottom corner of a slide about halfway through about mental skills support,
yeah.
Which is obviously a fashionable area at the moment. Yeah. What would that look like in your programme?
It's pretty new, and it's something that we've only just managed to get over the line this last couple of months. So that's being developed at the minute, but just looking to focus on a number of skills that the guys are developing out there in the real world, but then some areas that we end up getting snap judgments of first team coaches say, oh, he's not a good decision maker, or he's not punctual, or he's not got good self-awareness. Well, he's not coachable, and things like that. Now, that might be an awful lot of conformity, but it also might be some areas that these guys aren't developing, or they are having the skills that they've not got at the minute that they might need to get a little bit sooner, because they are going into a pretty competitive world where decisions will be made upon their performance day in, day out. So it will be just looking at some of the personal characteristics and skills that some of the guys have got that they might need more of, or that they've got that they could excel in, and those guys excelling in them end up pushing the team on. So it might be the self-awareness, it might be the self-regulation, it might be understanding that this is my career, this is me taking control of my career, and just the same as I'm a part-time university student as well, and this is me taking control of my career, part-time for 3 days a week at university, but I'm full-time at rugby 5 days a week, as well as representing my first team, or I'm representing my dual registration club on the Saturday as well. And it's just some of those off-pitch skills that certainly add to some of the on-pitch skills as well, rather than saying he's a leader, he's not a leader, he's self-aware, he's not self-aware, he can get up in the morning and motivate himself to train, but it is work in progress.
And worth picking up, Neil. So JP's alluded to it. So for last year, I've been working on like England Rugby's development framework, which is what do we see as the requirements, considerations for young people to go through to top. So if you look at traditional frameworks, they'll either be very staged, or they're trying to get away from you. There aren't stages, right? So stages don't start and stop. You don't do 13 to 15, all of a sudden you high-five yourself, go on to the next stage. Like, it's a very dynamic thing. But what we're trying to do is say, look, there are needs. The needs of a 13-year-old are very different to the needs of a senior England international. Now, at its worst, people in rugby at one level will critique and criticise and say, well, everything that's going on at the top is wrong and it's not right and it's not pure. Actually, the top could say the younger bits have got it all wrong. They're both right. They're both an answer for a stage in time. So what we've put together is a framework that will tell you, that says these are both traditionally and from a psychosocial point, things that will present differently in a young person, so they will when you're further down the pathway. The psychosocial stuff, we've got to 15, 15 behaviours, characteristics that we know. So we've had a few PhDs running. One has been on the traits of the world's best players, and actually what have they done? We've done a load of research of our own throughout the pathway, so current players, 15, 16, 17, 18, and then a broader review of the literature that says we know these psychosocial aspects.
Can you give us an example of what some of those might be, some of what your 15 are?
Yeah, so like Jon said, self-aware would come up, right? So the whole point of saying someone either, you're not definitely one and you're not definitely the other. So we would say, when you look at self-aware, we then define it, and we would say, look, self-aware is defined as knows self well, engages in continual self-reflection, understands typical responses in different situations. The important thing of a good framework, the important thing I think of a framework that you try and do well is say, look, that presents differently. So earlier in the pathway, or if someone is less developed, we would define that as, in terms of highly self-aware, is familiar with and understands the feelings they experienced before and during a match, as well as in training. Equally, we would say later in the pathway, or if it's more developed, we would say you're unable to understand and differentiate between different feelings, or you understand what helps them train and play at your best, because the whole point of a pathway, and without boring everyone too much, like, it implies movement through something. So when you read something that tells you it's definitely this, it's definitely not, right? So you do this, schools are brilliant at this. There's a whole reason you have curriculums, that the English lesson you deliver to year 7 is very different to one you deliver someone in upper 6th. However, I think we've got ourselves into a bit of a predicament at the moment where rugby's occasionally said there's one way of doing something. We wouldn't do that in a million years in education, but we've kind of got into this trap, I think, in coaching, saying we have. So what you'll see when you read it is both from a psychosocial, positional, and some sort of elements of social support saying these things present differently. And I think actually the one area, like we say, the one area we haven't done well, and certainly from a psychological behavioural point of view, we've almost made it so hands-offy. I think it's something that people feel very comfortable in rugby. Everyone gets nervous when they say, "Oh, you need a psychologist to do it." Well, of course you don't. Our psychologists say, of course, in every conversation you have with psychology, if we give you a framework that makes you a bit more comfortable to say, look, well, this conversation might be in service of, again, one of those things we'd say highly adaptable is one of the traits. So, you might be helping someone becoming highly adaptable. Now, you could do that by giving them some new techniques or tactics to try in a game and do that quite explicitly. You could do it by hiding their boots and letting them play in their mates' boots for a game. Okay, there are a million ways to do it. I think that's the skill of the coach, and that's the place we're going to encourage all of you is to get around and say, well, here's the trait. What do you think about it? How would you deliver it? It's not, like I say, there's no right or wrong. We'll just give you some central pillars, and we want you to really engage with it and come and debate it.
And this, and as John said, this is a work in progress. Is this likely to be in the public domain? Is this going to be accessible?
It will get launched. Well, as of this afternoon, I sent the final. We've had 13 versions of those final amendments through. It will launch within the next couple of months. So we'll get it into a really good place. Access to everybody, should be able to pick it up, be you a player, a parent, or just generally interested and understand it.
So just another 10 or so committees to go through before it's in the public.
No committees, straight out, Neil. The PADSIS committee can have a view.
Just finally, John, and maybe a word from John, and maybe a word from Don on that. Obviously, we're an audience of people who are running rugby in schools. No one's quite sure what that's going to look like in September. What would you like from heads of rugby in schools? If you could wave your magic wand, what is the thing that you would most value from the sector to support what you're doing? I don't know. Do you want to go first there, John? Or
yeah, just keep engaging. I value massively, and always have done, what the colleges and the schools and the other education establishments that are putting on and volunteering and getting rugby on for these guys. I would love to be in a world where there's an enormous pot of money where we can just have rugby going all the time. Do you know what I mean? There's enough pot of money that the academy can cover everybody in the region, but look, we just physically can't. So just you guys continuing to engage. You are one of the major key stakeholders behind the player and then his parent guardian, and then just supporting him on that journey with him. You asked, look, what are some of the characteristics that we picked out? One of them, Neil, is recognizing and capitalizing on opportunities. And if you guys have got EAPs, or you've got highly identified players in your program, or even just, I'm talking broader as well, not just rugby, other sports, just this is part of them recognizing an opportunity. This is part of them recognizing I am a different 16 to 18-year-old than what my mates are. They're different anyway because of what COVID's happened, and very, very different to when I was growing up in South Yorkshire and everything like that. But they are going to be doing the homework at different times. They are going to be having probably a little bit of extra time and a little bit of give and take on assignments. But they also have to understand that I can't just take. If Mr. Pendlebury is helping me along the way and giving me extra time on my geography lesson, do you know what I mean? So him recognising that is an opportunity that is helping him on terms of his geography and his maths and his physics, as well as it is helping him on with his rugby as well, because he is going to be able to get to that extra academy session, or he is going to be allowed out of school on a Friday to go and represent England in a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then he might be tired on Monday morning, but form teacher knows he's tired on Monday morning, so cuts him a little bit of slack, and just that. But coming along and getting engaged is just massive, and also asking, why are we doing something? I don't understand, why are we doing that? I think there's a better way of doing that. Have you thought about, and just a little bit of check and challenge from both sides, really.
So flexibility and engaging in the debate is what you're looking for then, John?
Yes, please, yeah.
And last word for Don. I know you're good at the last word, Don. Have you got the last word? And with unusual brevity, because we've passed 6 o'clock. So if you could give us 30 seconds on what you'd most like from heads of rugby to support what you're doing.
If my last words as good as your last quips, I think we're in for a winner. Neil, on there. Like Jon said, you are massively important, and I think it's critical. Like I said, it's a two-way street. We are really conscious. I am really conscious. Done well, like the rugby and the school accelerate someone's life, and I would happily use the word life because they want to make it. So come to the table. I am personally very keen to hear if you have issues. A good example, I know of one school has just contacted an RFU person and their academy manager to organise a sit down to go through that annual plan Jon showed you and get everyone aligned around it. That is what we want, and that's our expectations of the academies. So look, I guess lastly, it might not always seem like it, but I know everything you do is appreciated, and I don't say that in any other way. It's massive. The kids always speak highly of their schools, they speak highly of their mates, they speak highly of the environments. I think we're just trying to build on it. So we're keen to continue the relationship, and doors always open from my point of view to chat about it.
So that's an invitation for people to contact you and Jon if they've got concerns, questions, etc. at any stage.
Anytime.
Donald Barrell at rfu.com. Thanks very much. And thanks to everyone for your participation. I hope you found that useful. We also, as you'll be aware, have an event on Friday lunchtime with a law firm talking about the implication of head injuries in rugby that you might be interested in as well. Thanks to Mark and Mike for their initiative in setting this up, and to Jon for explaining his pathway. I hope you feel that's useful, and please do take up the invitation extended by Jon and Don to communicate with them if you'd like greater detail in that. Thanks very much to everyone. Good night.
Thank you, folks.